We've got breaking news out of the NFL. The Jets and wide receiver Garrett Wilson have agreed on a 4-year, $130 million extension. That's according to multiple reports. The deal includes $90 million guaranteed and makes him the 5th highest paid receiver in AAV. Since getting drafted 10th overall in 2022, he's played in every game and gained at least 1,000 yards each season. There's a look at the highest paid wide receiver list. And now Wilson can find himself in the top 5 after we saw Justin Jefferson set the market. Other guys chase. And then, of course, Jamar Chase eclipsing that with 40.3. Let's bring in our analyst, Mike Renner, to talk about the news here. So first and foremost, thoughts on Garrett Wilson getting paid?
It's something the Jets had to do, right? That draft with Sauce Gardner, Jermaine Johnson, I think they really need to keep that core intact. Those are your building blocks for this team. And especially when you look at the rest of the receiving room, like if he held out, if he wanted to, hold the Jets' feet to the fire, he could have, because they have no other option. So I think it made a lot of sense for the New York Jets here.
So, Mike, I've got it's a follow-up. It's the same one, although two different lenses. Let's first just start, you mentioned, with the Jets and how you evaluate a guy like Garrett Wilson. Do you see him as a true number 1 wide receiver?
I 100% do. I mean, he went over 1,000 yards with Zach Wilson throwing the ball back-to-back seasons, right? And obviously last year, ton of targets, like not super efficient, but he was the only guy defenses had to pay attention to, and you saw that. And now he's not your prototypical size number 1 type of wide receiver, but he's uber dynamic after the catch, and he is a guy who can be a big play threat down the football field to where at 24 years old still, like I think the best football from him is still ahead of him. So for Garrett Wilson, once they get some stability at the quarterback position, and I'm not sure they have it just yet, he'll still be there, right? A 4-year deal now, 4-year extension, that keeps him there till he's almost 30. Hopefully they'll have the quarterback position figured out by then and have the rest of the roster intact.
That's where I was going to go, because right now we have Justin Fields slotted there. Just give me the assessment of a Fields and Wilson team up.
Well, it makes you have to have a guy like him there because you are going to have a lot of 1 and 2 wide receiver sets. This is going to be a run-first offense. But that means when you do pass, when you do have those play action situations, you got to have that guy that's open down the football field. That's what the whole ethos of this offense is going to be. It's pound the rock and then hit you over the top. Garrett Wilson can be the hit you over the top guy, and he can also be the kind of screen guy underneath. So I expect Garrett Wilson to be at or near the top in terms of, market share. How many targets, as a percentage of the targets are going to him in that offense? I expect it to be at least a third, maybe even closer to half the targets, just because there's no one else there, and that's just how this offense is going to be set up.
All right, so you're bullish on Wilson. I'm curious to think if you're bullish on the Jets, because we've had conversations that we know that this has been the Bills division over the last handful of years. We spent a lot of time talking about sort of at least the thought that the Patriots are on the rise and maybe the Dolphins are on the decline. But if we take a look at their schedule, Mike, how do you envision this Jets team with Aaron Glenn in his first year with the team?
I think they're one of the most intriguing teams because they weren't bad in recent years because of a lack of talent, right? It wasn't because they don't have good players walking into that building every day. They just were terrible down the stretch last year because they had no cohesiveness. They had no leadership at the top. And now I think they have that. Aaron Glenn's going to bring that. I'm very curious to see what Tanner Engstrand, first-year offensive coordinator, brings to the table coming over from Detroit, where he was kind of the heir apparent, seemingly, to Ben Johnson, but then they obviously stole him and brought him to New York. So I think there's a lot of reasons to think that the defense bounced back to the form that was like, it was a top 5 defense the 2 years prior to 2024. If it just gets back in the ballpark of that and they have the electric running game we think they're going to have, it should be a winning formula. Now, can they win the Super Bowl with that? I'm not quite sure that they're yet from a talent perspective, but taking it back to Garrett Wilson, he's the type of player that you need if Super Bowl is your aspiration.
You mentioned the core, this young one that includes Sauce Gardner. In terms of the DB, where are you rated with him? Where does he rank for you in terms of top-tier defensive backs?
Yeah, I think there's a clear trio at the top. That's Patrick Surtain, who obviously just won Defensive Player of the Year, Derek Stingley Jr., who was the guy drafted just ahead of him in that draft class, and then Sauce Gardner. Like, it's those 3. They are the 3 best corners in the NFL. They're all 25 and younger. So we got a few years of these guys being at the top of their game. So you got this deal done. You've seen the cornerback market sort of set for Sauce Gardner. You know, we just saw Surtain get paid. We just saw Stingley get paid. I think we see Sauce get a deal at some point over the next calendar year that puts him right in that ballpark.
Okay, we kind of went into team mode. I do want to circle back with the wide receivers and highest paid AAV. It was sort of the second part of my same question. You answered it saying you think he is the number one, but in terms of what we're seeing with the AAV, and again, Chase, Jefferson, Lamb, and DK Metcalf, what's the next step for a wide receiver you think that will get maybe something in the 30s? I don't know if anyone else is going to challenge the guys that recently got deals that we talked about, Mike, but I could be wrong. Do you have another guy in mind that could once be on this list maybe at some time in the future?
Well, there's that same draft class where Drake London has yet to get paid, and obviously he's been a number one wide receiver. Jameson Williams has yet to get paid from that draft class. So I think we'll see those guys get some numbers, but I'm not sure we see them surpass Garrett Wilson. You know, he's been doing it since day one. He's been doing it with bad teams. And I think for them to get the deal under DK Metcalf, when if you're stacking those two guys up, Garrett Wilson, to me, is the more modern type of wide receiver that you would want in your offense. He provides a little bit more flexibility in what he brings to the table, and he's also younger than DK Metcalf. So for all those reasons, I think this is a good number for the Jets to get at. Obviously, anytime you draft a wide receiver top 10 and he produces right out the gate, it ain't going to be cheap. But for a borderline top 10 receiver to not set the market or not get even top 4 at his position, I think that's a win for the New York Jets.
Yeah, there's that saying, right, Mike? There's a cost of doing business. Jets looks like they had to do it, but to your point, looks like they're still getting some good return on the value of their investment that we're learning today. All right, Mike, certainly appreciate it. Check them out, of course, they're pushing the pile. A reminder about the countdown to Sundays. It's coming up in less than 2 months, and CBS will have more than 100 regular season games and more Sunday games than any other network. Again, watch your local game live or stream it on Paramount+.